welcome back to the Peer Perspective Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle VanBlaircom. If you enjoy what we're doing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and support us on all your favorite platforms. Your support helps us to keep sharing these incredible stories. I'm so excited to introduce my next guest, Erin and Marlin Meszaros, a powerhouse husband and wife team making a profound impact in the reentry and recovery space. Marlin is the director of Reentry Services at Damascus Way, bringing expertise in workforce development and community advocacy to help individuals transition from incarceration. Erin works at People Incorporated as a corrections integrated support professional, supporting justice impacted individuals on their recovery journey. Together, they bring unmatched passion and dedication to empowering lives through hope, healing, and second chances. Let's jump into their inspiring stories and the amazing work that they're doing out there.
So I'm Erin Meszaros, and I'm a peer recovery specialist. I'm in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is I haven't touched my drug of choice or any substances for 7 years, 9 months, since 4/14/2017. My drug of choice was methamphetamine and alcohol, but really anything that would let me escape from life. I have been homeless, been in jail, lost custody of my daughter due to my drug use, been in quite a few treatments, and now I use all the things that I've been through to help others come out of their struggles. So I love what I do for work. I am a forensic peer as well, and I just got my cultural endorsement, so I'm pretty proud of that. And currently, I'm working at People Incorporated Mental Health Services. Prior to that, I was working at Partners Behavioral Healthcare, and I started my journey at Metro Hope Ministries Women and Children's Program, where I was helping women get custody of their children back, which I never got to do with my daughter. So it was really something I was very passionate about.
Awesome. Thank you. And then
Yeah.
Marlin.
Yeah. So my name is Marlin Meszaros. I get to be Erin's husband. Um so I'm currently the director of Reentry Services at Damascus Way here in Golden Valley. My drug use, substance use started when I was literally 6 years old. Lasted until I was had just turned 40. And so during that time, I've experienced over 10 years of state correctional facilities and a couple of years of county jails and 10 or 11 treatments and broken families and broken lots of stuff. And I guess I kind of had a epiphany, so to speak, when I turned, I think I was 40 or 41 years old. And I just realized that at some point I can remember being as young as 2 years old. And if I applied what I can see in reverse memory forward, then if I live to be 80, the finish line is in sight. And I just didn't want the second half of my life to look like the first half. And so that kind of began my journey of serious recovery. That included another stay in prison. It included a couple of years in long-term faith-based treatment programs, and a faith-based program while I was incarcerated too at Lino Lakes. All of those programs helped me deal with a lot of the things that I hadn't dealt with for 40 years of my life. I realized too at some point that there was memories of stuff that I was hanging on to that for most of my life I thought that someday I would just forget. But kind of realizing at 40 years old, if you haven't forgot it by now, you probably should process it out and do something with it because it's not going anywhere. And so I did a lot of that work while I was incarcerated. Last time, I was blessed to be able to leave prison over 4 years early on a conditional release program for nonviolent drug offenders. And so with that opportunity to come out, I felt a strong burden to come out and be successful and to use my lived history to help people that were on the same path. Maybe not have to take so long to get to where I was, but also just to let them know that even as long as it took me, there's still hope and there's still a possibility of a future. And any day that we still get to wake up with breath in our lungs, we have another opportunity to make choices and change. And so, most of my life I was either an auto mechanic or worked in the trades or sold drugs, honestly. Chronic alcoholic for a lot of years and a methamphetamine, IV methamphetamine, drug user for a lot of years. And so, today to be where I'm at doing what I'm doing is nothing but stepping into a calling that let me experience a passion in my life. And so during this last 5 years, I've been able to meet Erin. We got married, we purchased a house, we have an awesome dog and a whole bunch of awesome kids together. 7 altogether and 6 grandkids and a set of twins that are on the way. So life is good. We still have struggles. We still have ups and downs. But every day that we choose a good solution, lo and behold, consequences don't come. And so I think that's really what recovery is about. And that's what I get to pass on to people. Just some simple things that I learned that were transformative to me. And, I hope that they help others along the way. So that's about it in a nutshell, I think.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate both of you. I did kind of want to back up a little bit and see if either one of you would maybe be comfortable sharing a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah. My childhood was middle class. I was an only child, and my mom was kind of a heavy drinker, and my dad was really like a workaholic. I I would think I was mostly happy, but probably a little bit depressed. And as my parents' marriage kind of started falling apart, um, I turned to food, I think, was the first addiction, if I look back. And then as AOL came out, um, then I started talking to like as my teenage years rolled around, it was talking to older guys on the internet. Um, and so then I think that morphed into like a sex addiction. Um, and then when my parents finally got divorced, it turned into drugs. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, my earliest memories of associating like happiness, I like have this core memory of when people are happy, they have alcohol in their hand. And so as a very young boy, I couldn't wait to get to be growing up or whatever so that I could have alcohol because that equated with happiness and fun times. And so, you know, long line of drinkers and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I got drunk for the first time when I was 6 years old. Drank like 6 beers, so a little over 6 beers, and passed out by the toilet. Woke up with vomit in my hair and all the stuff that a good alcoholic does. But at 6 years old, and so um, that that by the time I was 11 years old or so, I was smoking pot almost on a daily basis and still, sneaking out on weekends to go to kegger parties. My brother's older brother's a couple years older than me. And so everything that he did in life, I did it a couple of years before he did because, that's what annoying little brothers do, I guess. But, and then my parents eventually would divorce, around the same, I think I was 12 or 13 years old, something like that. My dad was interesting. I don't think that my father and I ever had a conversation that didn't end in "I love you" and that he didn't tell me he was proud of me. And so those things are important, but also my dad was a bad guy. Like my dad he was cheated on my mom almost constantly. Yeah, watched him more than once, like physically beat people. Um, and but he was good to me. My dad was nice to me. And so uh confusing, I guess, to say the least. I looked up to somebody that ultimately wasn't a good person, but like he had these qualities about him. Like if you were his friend, he'd die for you, you know what I mean? But he wouldn't do that for his wife. He wouldn't, and so all these mixed messages from my dad. By the time I was in sixth grade, I was skipping school one day. My dad was a over the road truck driver. My mom worked a full-time job, and the principal from the elementary school that I was attending came to the house to talk to me to let me know that I had officially missed one full year of school with all the days combined from first grade to sixth grade. And most of that time that I missed, I was with my dad in his truck traveling the country. My dad didn't value education. He was kicked out of school when he was in the seventh grade and, um, you know, owned at one point five semis and in the early 80s, like was making a lot of money for the time. Um, all that changed with the divorce and other things. And, we went from being very affluent in the early 80s to my mom living on, uh, the welfare system after the divorce and all of that. And my dad ended up having a bad motorcycle accident that disabled him for a while. And so, um, I tell you, from the beginning of the 80s to the end of the 80s, by the time, and my own kids were being born by then, I was thinking about it this morning, the ups and downs and the roller coaster of what in my life, very formative years, uh, was normal, right? Because that's what you're doing during that time is learning what normal is. Man, it was a roller coaster of, you know, everything, geographical moves, uh, you know, chemicals and divorce and money and broke and all of that. So, but
You guys kind of talked about Minnesota. Where are you both from?
Minnesota. I'm from Hastings.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
so I was actually born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Another crazy story about how my parents ended up together and how they ended up living in Oklahoma, but it's probably for another day. But uh, by the late 70s, I was born in 1972. My brother was born in 70, and my parents were both from Minnesota, and my grandparents' health was starting to fail, and so my parents decided it was time to move back to Minnesota when I think I was 4 years old or something like that. And so the majority of my life has been in South St. Paul, Dakota County, Minnesota, um, but actually born in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Are you able to like look back and identify when you felt like your substance use or your mental health became, um, for lack of a better word, problematic in your life, or when you started to see the consequences? I know in my own story, there was a period of time where my drinking and my drugging seemed very normal compared to other people, and then I think it was right around 18 years old, I started facing real consequences like going to jail, right? Are you able to kind of look back at your own life and see when that happened for you?
I think that it was right away. I don't think that I could ever drink like a normal person. I um I didn't really ever like drinking because I didn't really want to be like my mom. But even when I did drink, it was never just like one. it was always to get drunk. And then weed was never my thing. And then as soon as I tried meth for the first time, it just like made me feel like beautiful and smart. And it was, I literally felt like everything I was looking for, which talking now just makes me feel so gross. But at the time, it was literally everything I was looking for. But I had police interaction the very next day. Like I had consequences the very next day. And that should have been, that should have been, that should have been a red flag, but it wasn't. So, yep.
Yeah, I mean, for in hindsight, but like you said, um I was just doing what everybody else was doing that was around me. Like there wasn't nothing super extreme about what I was doing because that's how everybody was living that were in my circle of influence. And so I was just following suit, to be honest. But yeah, I was 13 years old the first time I went to detox. Got arrested for a minor consumption. And yeah, I thought that if I didn't black out, that I wasn't drunk. If I remembered the whole night before, then clearly I wasn't that drunk because I remembered everything. So that was quite the bar to set. And there was, most of the times that I drank, there was a blackout involved. So, but yeah, and by the time I was 19 years old, I had two kids, was in the middle of a divorce, and chronic alcoholic.
Kind of continuing on with major life occurrences, what would you say was the um, straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, or what ultimately shifted your trajectory in life to towards recovery?
I had, I mean, I think there was a lot of things that just really added up. Um, I had tried to get sober quite a few times, and every time that I got sober, I really thought I was giving it my all. I had a daughter when I was 17, and I really wanted to be there for her, but the shame of like losing custody of her, and it was to my parents, so I did have the ability to be in her life, and I would still choose to use drugs due to the shame of not being there. And my mental health was getting really bad. I didn't really know what was real and what wasn't a lot of times anymore because of the meth use and IV use and just being out there for so long. So I did want to take my own life a lot of times. Um, and my daughter was starting to, she was getting into cutting. So sometimes she would go to like a mental health hospital. She was 14 when I got sober, so I wanted to make changes for her. Uh, I was somehow keeping a job when it was in April when I got sober, and it was just like a very long winter of being homeless but also working at a hotel, and I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I know that's very cliche, but it was very true. I was just done. And it was the first time I had ever decided to go to treatment on my own. It wasn't to like get out of jail, and it wasn't because my mom like drugged me there. And um, it, to be honest, it was they finally put me on the color wheel. I had been like faking my UAs because was on group probation, and I kind of knew exactly the day that I had to go in. And I didn't want to be in jail. So there was a lot of things. Also, I had found Jesus in jail a time before, and I had known, like I had some good sobriety under my belt a previous time. And so this time I had like a very crazy experience, like high-speed chases, and I had been in a federal raid. And like the spiritual world, when you're getting high again and you've already known like your savior, and then you start dabbling in that realm again, is very dark. And so I wanted to be done, and I wanted to go back and be with what I knew. Um, So there was a lot of different reasons why I wanted to get sober again. I guess ultimately I feel like I still had some things to learn.
Yeah, for me, I guess to back up, like the mental health piece, I didn't understand um, for a long time what I was dealing with, and I'll just kind of make this brief. While I was uh, getting divorced, I rented a room from my uncle. My uncle by this time was about the only person that would drink with me because my alcoholism had got so bad, and by it was extreme by then, and so every morning started out with alcohol for breakfast so that I wouldn't be sick, and I would go to work at a shop and work on people's cars, and by lunch there was a bar next door, and I would have to go have a couple of shots or a few beers, not to be sick. But that uncle that I rented the room from would talk about suicide when we were drinking together, and I didn't believe him. And one day, and I had just started, like I had experienced experimented with a lot of other drugs, but alcohol had really just dug its claws into me. And I had methamphetamine was coming around at that time, and so I was doing dabbling in it, I should say. But my uncle did commit suicide, and I found him hanging in his garage. Um, and I didn't know what to do with them emotions. I didn't know what to do with any of that. What I knew was that methamphetamine, when I finally slept, I didn't have nightmares or visions of what I seen, what I seen that day. Um, and and so that it went on for a lot of years. I really believe that methamphetamine was like a gift from God or something, because it felt like it cured my alcoholism. People wanted me around. I was suddenly popular, and I had something that people wanted, and that to me was, I hadn't experienced that in quite some time. And so that it went on that way for a lot of years. Um, Slowly over time, as felony charges come and prison sentences and all that, like I realized that I bought into a lie, and that it's all bad. But by then it was ingrained in me, and so I kind of mentioned it in the opening though, but I had multiple felony charges pending, and I was 41 years old, somewhere in there, on my way back to prison for a long time. But I just had this vision, because again, I remember being as young as little as 2 years old, and if I live to be 80, I can see the finish line, and I want something different for the second half of my life. I wanted, uh, I have seven kids, really, with my bonus daughter, and at the time I had six, and some grandkids. I don't remember exactly how many I had at the time. I think it was three, but I wanted them, when I pass away, to be able to be proud of who their dad and grandpa is, not just have memories of what a disappointment he was. And so legacy began to matter to me. And so um, there's a lot of factors, but that was a huge part of it. So um,
Thank you both for sharing that. As you've kind of shared parts of your story, I can relate to a lot of what you shared as far as the consequences and, just yeah. It's I think it's important to kind of talk about that stuff, because then when you talk about what it looks like now, you can kind of see the contrast, right? And so, what does your recovery look like today?
Well, life is really good. The weird thing is that the longer I'm sober, the more I realize that I do have mental health problems. Like they're every year it seems like it gets worse and worse. So I was like, oh, okay, so that is there. Like I wasn't really sure like what came first. You know what I mean? Was it the addiction or the mental health, or maybe did the mental health come after the addiction? Like I don't know, but it's definitely there. And so now I'm dealing with it the right way, whatever that means. I mean, I go to therapy, and um, I'm not just praying it away, which, I thought maybe would work for a while. But that didn't work for me, and that's okay. But recovery is beautiful. My daughter is back in my life, and it was rough for a while. But today we are really like growing our relationship. She's 22. Um, my husband and I met each other when I was 3.5 years sober. Before that, I hadn't really been dating like a Christian woman would be. I was like looking for uh, guys with motorcycles on Facebook. Um, and I met Marlin, and all he had was a pedal bike. And we went on our first date, and it was like a 28-mile pedal bike ride. It was pretty cool.
That
But
sounds like a long pedal bike
it was
ride.
it was during COVID. So it was during COVID,
Okay.
and we both lived at like he had worked at Freedom Works at the time, and they couldn't have visitors there, and I worked at Metro Hope Healing House at the time, and we couldn't have visitors there. So we like while we were courting each other, we spent like most of our time outside, and we were like in the best shape of our lives ever, just bike riding all around. Um, so we met in the end of April, I think. We were dating in May. We were engaged by August and married by October, very fast. Um, yeah, we bought in a house. He got his driver's license. We got a dog, like he said. Um, our relationships with our kids have improved greatly. Uh, Jobs have flourished. I started college, which I never really thought I would do. I was just one class right now because I didn't want to like overwhelm myself. Things get, life gets super busy and overwhelming, but it's good.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Recovery, like we do a lot of church things. That's kind of our recovery. We go to Freedom Works. It's Thursday Night Connect. That's kind of our meeting. It's like they do a dinner and a fellowship, and that's pretty much our meeting. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. For me, doing what I do for a living, like it's kind of intertwined throughout my day-to-day everything. But I have one of my core support thing is a reentry breakfast that I try to attend every month. Um, that is I think last month we had probably close to 50 people there that were um formerly incarcerated and are out and doing good. And so um for me that's a big part of my recovery journey is incarceration and post-incarceration and all of that stuff. And so um uh that breakfast is huge for me. And then, relationships with other people. So when you're in and out of corrections, you don't think anybody makes it out. You don't think anybody, because you see seems like the same people in county jail when you're in and out and in prison and all that. And you don't really notice the one or two people that aren't there anymore that you don't see again. And then lo and behold, when you get in this life of recovery, you see that there's actually people outside that are making it that aren't going back to them places, and that's why you didn't see him again. And so that to me, I want to be more visible about that. You know what I mean? So I didn't know that there was people outside being successful for a long time. I just wasn't aware. And so we're pretty active on social media, um, showing people that there's a different life. And so um, one of the things that I love the most about recovery is when I have somebody from my past that I, maybe grew up with or, did whatever, um, reaches out and said, "Hey, it's time. Can you help me?" You know what I mean? And so, um, that's what puts wind in my sail, I guess, is, being able to reach back and, um, help somebody else, start down the path that I'm on today. And, it's just awesome to be able to do that with my wife. And Um, you know, um, life is good. I mean, we have our ups and downs and stresses, but overall, things are good. I'm living the best life I've ever lived, you know?
It's good stuff. And just to kind of add to your point, I mean, I feel like those people always reach out exactly when you need it to happen, right? And
Yeah.
they kind of yeah, I enjoy that as well. I mean, I've had a lot of people that have reached out just from doing this, right? And people have reconnected. A guy I just interviewed a couple episodes ago, we sat in prison together, and he ended up moving out to Arizona and doing some pretty amazing work out there. So it's just really cool how these things come full circle, and through that, it energizes you, you know? And so I could definitely relate. I can relate to so much of what you guys have said. You know, Erin, you kind of touched on it, but it sounds like you're going back to school. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit more about that? What are your goals with that?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, I do know. I started for ADCT, like alcohol, drug, counselor, because it made sense. Um, it's a 2 year degree, but if I continued on the way I'm going now, which was one credit at a time, it would take me 5 years to do it. But I don't really know if I want to do that job specifically because I did work in a treatment center and a lot of the counselors seemed like they were really stressed out. And there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with it. Um, and after you work as a peer recovery specialist, it's nice to not quite have those boundaries. You want to be able to share your story and you want to be able to go out in public with people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I cannot relate. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in school myself, so I get it. We've had some time to kind of shadow different people, and I'm like, I don't want to work in an office. Like, I mean,
Yeah, but now that I've been in school, there is some things that I've learned that I'm like, oh, well, that is really cool and that makes sense, and I am learning a lot. But I'm very interested in justice reform. I love my job right now. I get to go into the jail and work with people 30 days pre-release. Um, Dakota County Jail specifically, which is where I was arrested many times because I'm from Hastings. Um, my goal is to be a probation officer. Um, so Marlon thinks it would be a good idea if I got a social work degree. So in case I got burnt out as a probation officer, I could like move around. But I'm not really sure because I guess if you're a social worker, you need a master's. I don't know. I'm just gonna do what I feel led to do. Maybe I'll
it's the
never
way to
stop
do
going to
it.
school, one credit at a time.
Awesome. And then Marlon, how about you?
So um I have several degrees, but they're mostly fifth degrees, first degrees, and second degrees. Uh, I am peer trained, but full disclosure, haven't went and got my full certification. I haven't really needed it in the role that I'm in as a director. Um, and so though I do the work, it's not in official capacity in that way. Damascus Way, we do have our recovery community organization status, and we have a whole team of people here that are doing that work, and I supervise some of them from uh, the work underneath me. But yeah, most of the education that I have is just my lived experience, and then what I've been able to learn working in the field the last 5 years. And so I don't know. I just feel like God continues to open doors, and I just make the courage to step into them and uh, let Him help guide me and mold me to be able to do the work. So
Also, he's one of the smartest guys I know.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah, you are.
Good stuff. And you know, education's great, but we have that lived experience, which in many cases you can't learn that out of a book. So, um, awesome stuff. So, if you guys don't mind, can you talk a little bit about your current organization that you work for? And you know, you've already touched on it on the work that you're doing now, and you're both very passionate about reentry. Um, and just to back up, I think Dakota County, I keep seeing they have like a job or a resource fair
Yeah.
every so often, which I think is really, really cool. I would love to see something like that in our area. It's an uphill battle, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, if you
Yeah.
guys could share a little bit about that.
So I work for People Incorporated Mental Health Services. They have like 50 different programs. So the one I'm working for is the Corrections Integrated Support, and I am their newest employee. So I don't know if I'll do the best about explaining it, but I'm a peer on their team, the Dakota County team. We have a mental health practitioner, myself, is the peer, and Jamie, she's the other peer. And then Nicole's the mental health practitioner. And we work all together. We go into the jail. We go out and we start working with people 30 days pre-release is the goal. And then follow them out into the community and help them transition. And the goal is that they don't have to go back to jail and kind of stop that revolving door. Help them get into maybe an IRTS program or treatment or transition back home and just have somebody to help them find resources, be a support, get referrals to places, you know, just extra, whatever they need actually. And it's grant funded right now, which is really nice because we don't have to worry about red tape with billing inside the jail right now. But over the next year, it's going to transition into billing. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. But Dakota County Jail is doing really amazing things. I think they have over 20 programs in there right now trying to help the people that are in there just better their lives. So it's really nice to see that. They're really running that jail very well.
Yeah, I keep seeing, you know, those social media posts and I'm like, oh, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person. And so it's really great to see the work that they're doing there. And you know, I think that it's those small changes like we got to start to look at, you know, and see like, is there a better way to do what we're doing, you know, and actually help the people to change their life. So it's
Yeah, they
great
have
to,
other jails coming in there to see the way they're working that one. So I think that is very cool and I'm glad to be a part of it.
awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And then,
So um, I work for Damascus Way, again, director of Reentry Services here, but we're a community corrections, licensed community corrections organization, as well as a faith-based organization. And so we're faith-based, not faith-forced. Jesus didn't force anyone to follow him, and so we're not about that either. But if somebody's going to come to our organization, they'll can expect to experience Jesus's work in action, I guess. We are intentional about wanting to break the cycles of Damascus Way is very intentional to want to start to break the cycles of multi-generational incarceration. And one of the reasons that's important to me is because while I was serving my last prison sentence at Lino Lakes Correctional Facility, I had a son that was serving time just outside the fence at the Anoka County Juvenile Detention Center. And so, by the grace of God, my son is doing amazing today. He just recently started a new job down at a car dealership as an auto technician down in Rochester. And so happy about that. To see them cycles being broken in my own life is awesome. But we want to be intentional about helping that in everybody's life. So we have Youth and Family Services, Destiny Way, and Destiny Dads programs, which are currently contracted out of Scott County and work out of the Juvenile Detention Center in Scott County. That's our Destiny Way services. And our Destiny Dads services are in the Scott County Jail. And we also offer those programs at our reentry centers. So we have here in Golden Valley, we have a reentry center, and we have another one down in Rochester, and then we have community housing in Rochester, and then 2 houses in Scott County. And most recently, we purchased the house right behind the building that I'm sitting in right now, as a next step community type housing setting for the, you know, guys that are leaving, um, the transitional setting here that I oversee. So, um, it's exciting to be a part of helping that process to help break the cycles of it. And, again, just to be able to show hope and show that change is possible.
I say this a lot, but it's awesome to have that front row seat to that change happen in people's lives. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges either you see personally or your organization sees working in the field, working with people?
My challenges, I said this in the last panel I was on, is not telling people what to do. As a peer, you're supposed to, let people make their own decisions and motivational interview, and it's really hard to just keep your mouth shut and not, I mean, I understand that you're fostering people make their own decisions and the value in that, but also it's hard to watch people make the same decisions and it's hard to watch people make the same mistakes and um, suffer from them. Um, that is hard for me. So,
I get it.
mhm,
It's hard.
mhm.
So, for me, I guess some of the challenges we have in the work that I do here is, a lot of it has to do with funding and money and all of that. I oversee a budget here, and, we, you know, are, with our contracts and everything that we do and the services that we provide. We're a 24-hour staffed facility here, and, serving 3 meals a day, and, all the stuff that goes along with our contractual agreements with the state. Um, the money that they give us for doing that work comes up a little bit short, to be honest with you. And so, um, proper funding, is helpful. But on a more personal note, the things that I've struggled with over the years is, and honestly, my first year doing this type of work, I didn't know if I was going to be able to last, because it was investing in somebody and then watching them make a poor choice and maybe not necessarily fail, but set themselves back a big distance when just like you're being their biggest cheerleader and have so much hope for them, and then, you know, uh, then they're high again or whatever the case is, and like, throwing everything away. And, so I had a very good friend of mine and mentor, and her advice to me was is that you got to be married to the mission, not to the outcome. Um, and it took me a long time to adjust to that. It made sense right away, but it was hard to, like, um, get myself to make a disconnect of, like, I'm going to pour into this individual. Their outcome is their outcome, and it's up to them. And I don't need to own that part of it if they make poor choices. I just need to know that I did my best work every day to help influence and try not to make that happen. And so over time, I've gotten better at that, but, it's an emotional roller coaster at times when have people, and, and everybody has a different, uh, emergency every single day. And so, if it's because they need a ride to the store to get a pack of cigarettes, or if it's, something even, more, but whatever it is, it's an emergency to them at the moment. So,
Ours, I forgot to mention, our grant has limited us to working with people 30 days pre-release. And there are people that we would like to work with that we could advocate for. They would benefit for our services longer than that. And so we have a hard time to say no to people that would like our services. And our hands are pretty much tied with the grant. But hopefully that'll be changing when the grant runs out and we start running off billing. But I think we're waiting for the 1115 waiver to go through for that. I think that'll be tied into that maybe.
And you'll have to educate me here on what the 1115 waiver is.
Um, it is something is it only Minnesota, Marlin?
No, it's a federal waiver that has to do with Medicaid and I don't know, a bunch of boring stuff, but ultimately what it boils down to is that people should be, if it all goes through the way that it's planned, eligible to stay on medical assistance or attain medical assistance their last 90 days of incarceration or
Yeah.
not lose their medical assistance. And so billable services will be able to be inside of facilities ultimately, is what the hope and plan is. And so for county jails and that work, a lot of times it's somebody won't lose their medical assistance. And for the population that I serve coming out of state prisons, they'll be able to have um, medical assistance funding in place prior to reentry, which should be huge if it works out.
Yeah, I know that's a huge barrier for people as they go into jail and they lose their insurance and then they get out and it's like kind of an uphill battle, right? Especially when you're talking about getting connected to services or starting treatment or whatever. It's just like one more barrier. So it sounds like it could really help a lot of people. Um, can you talk a little bit about what you see as being the future of peer support or the future, in the field or what you would like to see happen as far as helping people?
I am interested. This is something that's been on my mind lately. There is family peer support for mental health practitioners, mental health peers, and there's family coaching, private pay. So I'm wondering if there will ever be like family peers for recovery, family peers for recovery peers. Because the reason I'm wondering is I had a situation where I was talking to a family member and trying to explain to them what was going on with an ROI, but the justice system is so confusing, even for a person that's in jail. But then when you're trying to explain to their family what's going on, it seems to me that would be beneficial for the family. And why would it be billable for a mental health and not a recovery? So I would like to see that for a recovery peer. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, you know, from the peer, I think maybe it's coming. I know they talked about it last legislative session, but uh, group interaction, like to be able to have some billable services for facilitating groups, um, just educational purposes, not necessarily, um, uh, you know, trips to the store and things like that, but stuff that makes sense. Um, and I guess the thing that I with what happened in Minnesota here recently and some of the um, alleged fraud and all of that like there's areas tightened up that need to be tightened up so that everybody that's doing this work on board has clear expectations and clear instructions as to what's right and what isn't. One of the things that me and Erin have talked about multiple times is peer training. It doesn't necessarily cover billing practices and all of that. And so, to have either an endorsement training or uh, something along those lines to help prepare um, that piece, I think would be helpful. I go back into prisons fairly often and speak, and Minnesota's on the forefront of getting peers trained inside of Minnesota correctional facilities. And as I talk to the different groups that are involved with that, I encourage them to learn what case noting is and how it works. And even if it's, in their situation, jotting it down in a notebook or whatever, but if they want to have a future in doing the work, that they get used to that piece of it because it's huge and it's important. So
Yeah, those are the things they don't really talk about, right? In the
right.
training. Kind of going back to you, Erin, you had mentioned early on about cultural endorsement. Can you talk a little bit about the different endorsements that they offer? And then you mentioned cultural endorsement specifically. Can you explain that?
So we have the forensic endorsement.
Well, it's great that they're offering that. I appreciate you guys. I'm honestly so impressed by both of you, and grateful to have spent this time together. I do want to kind of give you this last opportunity. If there's anything else you wanted to say, if there's something maybe that you would say to somebody who is struggling right now, or maybe somebody who is interested in becoming a peer, any last words for either one of you?
I'll just share, some of the kind of general advice that I give guys as they're coming out, and some of the stuff that's helped me the most. And, um, the a very transformative piece of advice that I heard, and it was that, my problems aren't my problems, my solutions are my problems. And so when I heard that, it took me a little bit to digest it. Um, but ultimately, for most of my life, when anything would come up, I would go get high about it. And then consequences would happen in my life. And so, um, if we just choose solutions that don't have consequences tied to them, problems kind of work themselves out eventually. And then show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So, that's especially working, with the population that are returning from incarceration. And sometimes you want to get out and see the old fellows or see the old group or whatever. And like, that's, the first step towards recidivism or relapse or whatever the case is, putting yourself in them same circles. And so, I encourage people to surround themselves with people that are, doing good things, and lo and behold, you'll find yourself doing good things. It's just kind of how it works. And so, and if you're struggling, reach out. There's so many different ways to, with Facebook and social media and everything else, and um, that's out there. There's a million different ways to find support. So